Hello and welcome to Swarajya Standard. Today we're going to talk about the trouble at IndiGo. Now IndiGo is an airline that we travel quite frequently. It's a really popular airline which is reflected in its market share. The market share is closing in on 50%. It had a great show during the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2019 as well, and the shareholders actually reaped great dividends from that. And it was able to manage this even in a year that was quite turbulent for Indian aviation industry. But there is trouble brewing in IndiGo's wings. There's apparently a feud that's brewed between its two promoters, and that threatens to sort of tame IndiGo's success in the future. So to put all this in perspective and explain this to us, we have with us our editorial director R Jagannathan, who we fondly call Jaggi.
Hi.
Jaggi, could you explain this feud to us? What is this bickering and butting heads going about?
Well, there are two alpha males among promoters. The two co-founders are Rakesh Gangwal, who is a US airline industry professional, and Rahul Bhatia. Both of them hold roughly the same amount of shares.
Okay.
Gangwal is the sleeping partner, has 37%, and the operating partner, that is Rahul Bhatia, has about 38%.
Right.
They have a shareholders agreement which says that Gangwal has to vote the way Bhatia wants.
Right.
And so what is happening is that right now when airline is flush with success and is now near monopoly in the Indian skies, actually both the partners have now developed differences, and I think Gangwal no longer wants a silent role. He probably wants something more. That is at the crux of the dispute here. Also, let's not forget one simple thing. The value of the airline is now $7.5 to $8 billion in market cap, right? Yeah. And each of these partners owns about $2.8 to $3 billion worth of it. Now, if you own $3 billion, will you just sleep tight and say, look, what can I do with the money otherwise?
Yeah.
So that's a key question there.
But what sort of dictated this agreement between these two promoters that Gangwal would just vote according to Bhatia? Like, how was that drafted? What played into that? Like, why did he choose to be like a silent partner till now?
I think Gangwal is an American citizen and can't really have a more direct role in this thing. So he put his capital, worked with the strategy in the initial part, and nobody knew that IndiGo would be such a thumping success.
True.
Okay, so when you're a small airline, partners tend to work together.
Yeah.
But when you're a huge success, then you have to worry about what you do with all the money that now belongs to you.
True.
So that's a huge difference between now and say a decade or so ago when this agreement was worked out.
Right. And how is he sort of moving on this now? Now he wants to obviously play a more active role. So what is he? I heard that he sort of knocked on SEBI's doors.
Yes. I think the shareholders agreement under which Gangwal has to vote along with Bhatia and more or less let Bhatia run the whole show, including the board, is coming to an end now. Okay. Unfortunately, actually the shareholders agreement elements like Bhatia's effective control of the whole show is hard-coded into the Articles of Association, which means even if they change the shareholders agreement, the company can continue to function as it always has. Which is why I think Gangwal, short of an out-of-court settlement or a behind-the-scenes settlement, has escalated the matter to SEBI in the hope possibly of getting the AOA changed under pressure.
Right. And so now, but in his sort of bid to get a more active role, he sort of alleged that there's corporate misgovernance at play at IndiGo and that they are not being fair to their values and principles. Is there any truth to that? Like, where does this come from?
No, I think it comes basically from the disconnect between shareholding power and effective power.
Okay.
So, while one can look at corporate governance issues, but basically Gangwal has made a point about one key thing, which is related party transactions. That is transactions among parties related to that Bhatia has some connections with between the airline and those.
Right.
Now, those are actually 0.5% of its turnover, which means it's a very minuscule part of the overall business. So it can hardly be a big issue now because those could have been sorted out in 5 minutes discussion at the board level.
True.
But that has not happened. So I think that is probably a lever that Gangwal is using to get the issue out into the open, put pressure on Bhatia to either get him an exit from the airline, in which he walks away with about $2.8 billion worth of this thing, or to give him a larger role in running the airline.
Plus, one could also argue perhaps that he's been quiet for so long. If there is this allegations that he's claiming, it's not something that's new. So basically, what you're saying is he either wants control or cash, and right now is getting neither of that.
Yeah.
As you write in your story on the website. So how do you see this feud playing out now? What do we get to see now in the future? How are they set to resolve this?
See, there is only one way to resolve it. One is one of the partners has to exit. Okay, which means either the other partner has to buy this partner out so that he retains total control, or he has to allow one of the partners to start selling his shares in the market, either in one lot or offload in favor of a large institutional buyers. So exit is possible, but coexistence at similar levels of shareholding is not quite likely, because basically when you are similar shareholding, why should one person cede total control to the other? That defies logic.
Yeah. If you were to be in Gangwal's shoes, let's say, what would your moves be? How would you sort of look to get the best out of this situation? Would you look to exit? Would you look to sort of press in further into this matter? What would you do?
I would suspect that Gangwal might be happier with an exit, or provided he gets a fair value for his shareholding. Because staying on and having a jugalbandi where two guys are trying to run the same airline will create a lot of clashes, personality clashes and others. So the better thing would be for him to exit. And the advantage is if he gets that kind of money, he can actually buy several other airlines that he wants to run and show that he can also run an airline. So there is no benefit in two guys, both very successful people in their own way, wanting to run the same airline.
Wow, and given IndiGo's dominance in the sector, I think it wouldn't be too bad if Gangwal, say, decided to set up his own airline and then challenge IndiGo.
Yeah, Indian aviation policies are on the twilight zone of a change. Right now, foreign owners can own up to 49%. But in the Air India sale, there is talk that the government may even allow 100% ownership, with, of course, majority being Indian. So once these shareholding norms change, Gangwal could well come and pick up some stake in an Indian airline that is up for grabs. Air India, of course, has a lot of legacy issues, but Jet is at the bankruptcy court, which means you can get it at a very low fire sale price. So if he really wants to try his hand at running an airline rather than just owning a share of it, he could try one of these things. We don't know what's in his mind, but certainly the fact that he owns $2.8 billion in cash, and that cash is not of any use to him, must be burning a hole in his heart.
And what's the future for IndiGo as a result of this feud? Because it's been doing well. It had a slightly rough first half, and then it was able to recover really well. In the short term, what future do you see as a result of this feuding?
No, IndiGo has got a brilliant strategic plan, which is they know that the Indian airline market is not a low-cost market, it is a low-fare market, which means the net revenues you get from passenger fares are low, whereas costs tend to be high. That is, airport charges are high, landing fees are high, then sometimes fuel costs tend to be high. So in this scenario, the only airline that can succeed is one which has all its cost parameters under control, whether it is aircraft leasing charges, whether it is finance charges, whereas it is fuel charges, whether it is aircraft time in the air. Every single airline parameter needs to be at the lowest level of cost. Then you can make a profit. That is what IndiGo got right, and that is what Gangwal knows too. So other people are trying to emulate this. But short term, IndiGo is on a purple patch. So there is it's got 50%. It should actually worry about the fact that sooner or later the regulator will start worrying whether it's a monopoly. So I think more competition is necessary even for IndiGo to continue doing better.
All right. Thank you so much, Jaggi, for your insights. That's a wrap for today's episode of Swarajya Standard. See you again tomorrow.